start a golf game, the first thing you do is you say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then you don't say you're sorry for the rest of the golf round. So just to be clear for everybody, this is the first time I'm running a meeting. So I'm about to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then every time I make a mistake, I'm not saying anything. I'm just going to probably say, oops, and carry on. So that's over with. Feel free to, wave at me or whatever if I mess up. So I'm calling the meeting to order again, July 8th, 2024. City Clerk, could you please conduct the roll call?
Councilmember Wilkinson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Cooper.
Present.
Councilmember Chemnitzer.
Present.
For the record, Mayor Mark and Councilmember Lynch are absent.
Thank you. Is there any member of the City Council who has a report this evening?
I do. I attended the ABAG General Assembly. It's once a year. I'm the Belvedere representative, and ABAG, for those of you who don't know, is the Association of Bay Area Governments. We had hoped that we would be discussing housing, but that was only discussed in public forum. And the thrust of the meeting was sea level rise and climate change. So I do want our residents to know this is very much on the front of the agenda this year, and will be for the foreseeable future. For the Association of Bay Area Governments, there will be a lot of collaboration and coordination among the jurisdictions of the Bay Area, and I think we can all look forward to that.
I would just like to add that Councilmember Chemnitzer was reelected as the alternate for MC ABAG, Legislative Executive Committee, that one. I attended the June Belvedere Tiburon Library Agency Board meeting, and I wanted to let everyone know that our Belvedere representative, Tony Hooker, was elected to be the new board president for the coming year. We'll now take public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on any of the city council reports? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to the city manager report. Mr. Zadnik, can we please have your report?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Cooper. I have a few items of general interest tonight. The 2024 curbside pickup program concluded at the end of June. Collectively, residents and staff gathered 150 cubic yards of flammable material from around the city. That's about 50 truckloads of vegetation. I'd like to applaud our Public Works Director for administering the program this year and his team for coordinating those pickups. It's a lot of work. Special recognition also goes to a number of residents at properties at 15 Toyon, 6 Pelican Point, 226 Bella Vista, and 112 Bella Vista for getting their properties ready for fire season. They really did an outstanding job. Moving on, one of council's initiatives this year was to update the city's onboarding process for newly elected council members and volunteers. I'm glad to report that the update is well underway. Our orientation packet has been refreshed, and we're planning introductory training for new members of the Parks Committee and Planning Commission in August. The updated onboarding materials will also be available for new council members following the November election. Council members Nancy Chemnitzer and Jim Lynch have done a lot to spearhead this initiative, so a special thanks to them for their hard work and supportive staff. As I mentioned myself, the department heads and the city attorney will be hosting training for the volunteers at the beginning of August, along with some refresher training for all committee members during the regular Parks and Open Space Committee meeting and upcoming Planning Commission meeting. And then next, you may recall I agreed to provide monthly council meeting updates on the Mallard Point project. There isn't much new information to report since last June. Last month, staff met with the developer to discuss the demolition permit. The developer is currently working on infrastructure, demolition, and bulkhead designs, and they're targeting having those completed in the next several months. Ideally, they are hoping to have the work begin in the third quarter of 2025, with the understanding, of course, that they get the permits. Again, not much to report in that front, but I'll keep you in the community updated on any new developments. And then finally, I'm pleased to announce a new City Hall outreach program. Starting in August, I will be hosting Coffee with the City Manager. This program offers an opportunity for residents to learn more about the inner workings of City Hall and engage in an informal chat about topics of interest. Everyone is welcome to attend. We will provide more information such as meeting location, day and time via the city's newsletter and website as we get closer to that date. But that's all I have now. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? Okay, does anyone here in our public wish to make any comment on the city manager's report? No? City clerk, do we have anyone on Zoom wishing to comment?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Chief Wu, may we have your report?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Vice Mayor Cooper and council members. Tonight, I am pleased to present the Police Department's second quarter report for 2024.
Jason, sorry to interrupt. Our panels aren't working here, so we can't see anything.
Is there a button that we turn on?
We can turn our heads.
We'll turn around.
Okay.
Oh, there, this one came on. Push the top button there. I didn't. Push it. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. The PDO prides itself in delivering an unparalleled police service that allows our residents to enjoy a very unique quality of life. Starting off with our RIPA data for the second quarter, I apologize for the mistake in the dates there. It shows that we stopped 26 individuals based on 6 calls for service and 20 officer initiated actions. Of the 26 stops, 21 were for vehicle code violations and 6 were for suspicious criminal activities. In all, 23 warnings and 1 citation were issued, along with 1 arrest made, one individual was taken into protective custody. Sorry about that again. The perceived racial composition consisted of 5 Hispanics, 1 Southeast Asian or Middle Eastern, 1 Black, 1 Asian, and 18 Caucasians. During this quarter, the department handled 898 incidents, which included 0 Part 1 offenses and 3 Part 2 offenses, which are all highlighted in bold. Of the remaining 895 incidents are classified as all other incidents, with the majority relating to calls for services. During this quarter, the police department conducted 19 traffic stops, made 1 arrest with 1 referral for prosecution, and received several citizens' appreciations. 50 coyote-related incidents were also reported during this quarter. As part of our ongoing professional development, PD personnel attended online and in-person training that were either mandated or for knowledge and skill enhancements. And also during this quarter, we updated 1 and added 2 new Lexipol policies in accordance with amended laws. And these are detailed in the staff report. Lastly, the PD continues to be active in community events, which we always take great pride and joy in being part of. And in conclusion, I just want to say that Sergeant Andy Rosas officially retired on June 27, 2024, after 34 years of faithful service to the city of Belvedere. His humor, institutional knowledge, and friendship will surely be missed. And with that, staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Sergeant Rosas, for all of your work and dedication. dedication to Belvedere for all those years. Thank you for that report. Does anyone have any questions? Oops. Anyone have any questions or comments on Police Chief Wu's report? Anyone here in the audience or on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to the presentation by Joe Ryrie of Pavement Engineering, Inc. on Belvedere Pavement Management Plan update for 2024. Since there's no staff report on this item, our Public Works Director Boyd, would you please introduce the item?
Yes, absolutely, Vice Mayor, and good evening, council members. In 2023, the city participated in the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Pavement Management Assistance Program, or PTAP. This program funds an assessment of the city's streets, known as the PTAP report, which provides an analysis of road conditions throughout the city and uses the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI, to provide an overall score for the city's streets. In addition, the report provides a 5-year spending analysis showing how different spending alternatives would affect the PCI score. The latest PTAP report was completed by Pavement Engineering Incorporated in May. This evening, we have the principal engineer and president of Pavement Engineering Incorporated, Joe Ryrie, to give a small presentation on what goes into the PTAP report, how the PCI score is found, and what the forecasted spending amounts mean for the city's pavement management planning. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Tony. Vice Mayor Cooper, members of the council, it's a pleasure to be with you and talk about a subject that I really like a lot, and that's pavement. So buckle up. We're going to go through a few things tonight, and hopefully you all feel the same way I do about pavement at the end. Hopefully you'll be able to see. Are you all sharing one screen up there? Okay. All right. So have a couple of goals that I want to have for this presentation. One, I want to start us off and talk a little bit about Pavement 101, at least that's what I call it, some background on pavement, get into some pavement management principles that we use as best practices in the industry. Then we're going to talk about what we found as part of our assessment. And then we're going to talk about what budgeting needs there are for your pavements, and then provide some recommendations for you to consider. So with that, let's start off with Pavement 101. So when we talk about a pavement, it's a structure that is dependent on two different forces. The first one is what is it being built on? And then the other force is what is the loading on top of it. And the heavier the loading and the more poorer the soil that you're building on, the thicker that section needs to be. And so that's something to understand. The next thing that I want to make sure that we understand is that pavement does not deteriorate in a linear fashion. It deteriorates a lot like this S-shaped curve that you're seeing in front of you. It will look good for a while, and then it will fall off very quickly, and then it will just be bad if you don't treat it. And we've all seen that. We drive around the road, and on one day we'll look at it and go, I don't remember this road getting this bad. When did it get so bad? And so that's an indication that that pavement is getting on that steeper part of the curve. Remember this curve because we're going to come back to it again. Asphalt pavement deteriorates two different ways. One is by the oxidizing effects of the sun and water and the effects it plays on the pavement. And the other is fatigue loading, the constant loading of heavy traffic riding over the top of it. And let's talk about each one of those individually. So the environmental effects or oxidizing effects, when pavement is constructed, it is a lot of different size aggregates that we put together, and we hold it together with a binder, an oil. In the olden days, we used asphalt, and that's why we called it asphalt, but it was oil that we use nowadays. It's an engineered oil, and as the pavement is baked by the sun, it loses some of the volatiles in the oil, and it begins to shrink. And when it shrinks, cracks begin to open up in the pavement. And then as soon as those cracks start opening up, water can start seeping into the pavement and through the pavement down to the underlying structure, weakening it and causing it to deteriorate faster. This is a way that we try and convey what happens with the loading conditions on a pavement. To tell you how long ago we did this, I'm going to ask you to think about what a Chevy S10 Blazer might have looked like. It was a small SUV vehicle many, many years ago. And what we did is we took different types of vehicles and we compared it to the Chevy S10 Blazer. One typical 2-axle truck is equal to 442 Chevy S10 Blazers. So when we look at roads, it's not about the busyness of the road. We're looking at the weight that's on the road. One fully loaded 5-axle truck that's delivering to Safeway is equal to almost 15,000 Chevy S10 Blazers. Garbage trucks are around 10,000, and that has had an impact on us as we start to have more and more garbage truck trips per week. Though our roads weren't necessarily designed to that. We would design it to 1 trip per week. And now we're having at least 3 that are on there. And I keep hearing some communities talking about a 4th one. So let's talk about different types of common pavement distresses. On the left side is weathering and raveling, and that's when we start to lose the very fine parts of the aggregate off the top of the surface of the pavement. In the next slide over, or the next picture over, is transverse and longitudinal cracking. When pavement is constructed, we have weak places on there, and usually it's right down where the paving joint is, down the middle of the road, which you can see here. And then it also is shrinking in the transverse direction as well, because as it gets smaller, it's got to crack somewhere. As the lines start connecting, then in the 3rd slide, we call that block shrinkage cracking. All 3 of those are environmental type distresses. And if you build a brand new road, a brand new pavement, and it never sees a car or a truck or anything, it's going to exhibit those types of distresses no matter what. The 4th slide is alligator cracking. We call it that because it looks like alligator skin, and that's a fatigue type of a distress. When we see that type of a distress, then we know that the pavement has met its design life. It's what we design into it in terms of the loading conditions have exceeded. Just like if you overspend on your banking account or checking account, it's at 0 or negative, and that's what we're seeing with the roads here. So I find that pavements talk to me after a while when I drive around and look at roads. I can tell what's causing it. Okay, but we're here to talk about the PCI, or the Pavement Condition Index, and that's a scale that is from 100 down to 0, and it's been around since World War II. We used it initially, or it was developed initially by the Army Corps of Engineers to assess airports and runways. And so we were trying to figure out a way to talk about the pavements and the condition of the pavements. And that's been carried forward and refined to what we have today with the Pavement Condition Index. 0 is failed, 100 is brand new, and then the different types of distresses will cause that to deteriorate and become less and less. And when we went out and rated the roads as part of this grant process, there were 8 different distresses. 7 are listed there. They've since broken out weathering and raveling and to 2 different types of distresses. And so we looked at each one of those distresses individually and came up with the rating for each one of the city streets. Okay, so let's just give a little bit of an example here of what different PCIs could mean. 100 PCIs I mentioned. This is an example of a brand new road, just paved, no cracks, no distresses, nothing's wrong with this road. So it's a PCI of 100. This is considered a road that is in good condition, but if you look very closely, you can see that it's starting to weather and ravel right in the very surface part. No cracking has begun to form yet, but we're seeing that top surface begin to wear off. This is rated at an 85. Here's a road that's at a 70, and we're starting to see some of the cracking begin to appear. You're seeing the longitudinal crack that's beginning to form and some transverse cracking that's beginning to form. And this road is considered a 70. Here's one that's a 60, and we're starting to see those cracks start to connect together. And then here's one that's a 51, and those cracks are starting to manifest and exhibit some alligator cracking around the edges. And so the condition is getting worse. Here's one that's a 38, a lot of alligator cracking and a lot of weathering and raveling is being exhibited on this road. And here's one that's 28. I love this picture because if you look at one side of the road versus the other side of the road, you might be able to have this pavement talk to you in terms of, wow, something different is happening on that left-hand side. Probably there's a truck route or a bus route or something, that some heavy vehicle that is actually driving more on that side of the road than the other one. And this one just reminds us why we have roads in the first place. Okay, so with that background, let's talk about some pavement management principles. And the overriding principle that we use and that industry uses and defined by the Federal Highway is applying the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time using the right materials. I'm a visual person, and so I like to see things in picture format. So let's go back to our deterioration curve and think about what we just learned. Applying the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time is illustrated by this picture here. So when a pavement is in good condition and the cracks are just starting to manifest, we want to do some crack sealing on there and seal up those cracks, keep the water out from getting into the pavement. When pavements are in really bad condition, you are looking at more of a reconstruction type of a mode. So if we're going to do the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time, we wouldn't take a pavement that's in really good condition and reconstruct it. That would be wasting our money. Similarly, if you've got a pavement that's in really poor condition, you're not going to go out and do a lot of crack sealing to it because, again, you're wasting your money. And so we're trying to apply the right treatments to the right pavement at the right time. As long as I've been doing this, I've only found 3 different ways to be able to manage your pavements when you have limited money. And I don't know any city that has all the money in the world to be able to spend on their roads, along with the other things that you have to spend money on. And so the first type of management approach is to take a top-down type of an approach, which means you're going to focus on you're going to take your limited dollars and you're going to just focus on your best streets in town and ignore the rest of them. So that's a top-down approach. The other one is a bottom-up approach, or worse first approach, which is you line up all your pavements and you say, this one is the worst road in town and I'm going to focus all my money on the worst ones in town all the time. The problem is neither of those are sustainable over time. There's strategies that you can apply for a short while, but over time, if you just spend your money on all the good streets in town and keep your good streets good and ignore the rest of them, then you're going to end up with 2 groups of streets, a bunch of good ones and a bunch of really bad ones. If you always spend your money on the worst streets in town and you use that for your selection criteria, then you're going to be spending all of your money on your most expensive streets, and you only are able to cover just a little bit of work because you're spending a lot of money. So what we try and use is more of a critical point management style, which is illustrated by this picture. So again, we see our deterioration curve and we see the different types of treatments along the edge or along the curve. And then we also see that there are red circles along there. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to manage your pavements by selecting streets that from all different categories on the deterioration curve. And there's a point on its deterioration cycle that when pavement hits a certain point, you can apply a treatment, but if you wait much longer, then it's going to require the next treatment. And so, and it'll stay in that category for a little while before it falls into the next one after that. So critical point management is trying to capture those pavements right before they fall into the next higher cost type of a treatment. And to give you an idea of how much that can be, when you're in the upper range, you're dealing with, around $10 per square yard. When you're dealing in construction, you're dealing with several $100s per square yard. And so you're trying to manage your pavements by selecting treatments out of each one of these categories right at that critical point. And the pavement management system allows you to be able to do that, or helps you be able to find your streets to be able to work on that type of an approach. So let's talk about what we found as part of our assessment. The city of Belvedere has almost 12 center line miles of road. If we were to line them up from end to end, you own about $1.4 million or 4 million square feet of pavement, and your system-wide average of all of the PCIs is a 73. That means you have some below, some above, but the average is 73. If you were to replace all of your pavements, not including the curb and gutter, not including the sidewalks, not including the curb ramps, the cost would be $48 million. So it's a really large asset that you're trying to manage and maintain. We break it down as part of our report in terms of functional classification. So functional classification for a roadway is your busiest streets are considered arterials used by everyone, and your local streets, the ones that most houses are built on, are residential streets. Collectors are the in-between streets that we have. Your arterials are in really good condition. They're an 88 on average. Your collectors are 73 and your residentials are a 71, but as an average, they're a 73. We like to look at the pavement in a gradation type of a format. This is I call it the 10-point spread, and it's grouping the pavements in the PCIs into 10-point groups, 100 to 90, 90 to 80, all the way down. And you can see where the bulk of your pavements are in between 90 and 60. That's where the bulk of your pavements reside. That tells me that the city of Belvedere is in a maintenance type of a mode. That means that the pavement treatments that you could expect to be performing are by and large maintenance treatments. Just trying to manage the cracks, manage the wearing surface, and try and keep those pavements in better condition. But you also have pavements that fall down into the lower categories as well too. And so with critical point management, you're going to be spreading your dollars around it and not ignoring those. Okay, so let's talk about funding needs. We're almost to the end of this ride, but there's quite a bit of information here. We're showing 5 different scenarios that we ran here. It's important to understand that the assessment started by finding that the city, it was at a 73. And if you wanted to manage or maintain a 73, the cost would be $272,000 per year in order to maintain a 73. Now, I want to point out that this is a 5-year projection. If we were to expand that to a 10-year projection, we might see some things different on the far end, but 5 years is what MTC wants us to look at. If you wanted to increase your PCI, this is the blue line, by 5 points, you would need to spend $735,000 per year in order to achieve that. If you didn't spend anything, the red line, you could expect your system to deteriorate over the next 5 years from a 73 down to a 67. One of the things that's always interesting, the two graphs that we really like to, that I think are the most relevant to us, is what would happen if we would have all the money in the world, and that's the green line, and what can this system achieve in the long run? And what this is saying is that over 5 years, if you had all the money available to you, you would get up to an 84, but it would require a $3.5 million infusion of money into the system to take it up into the 80s. But then it only would take about $602,000 to be able to maintain it once it was up in that range. The other one that's interesting is we worked with Tony and came up with what is the expected current funding. And I'm pleased to report that on the gold line there, you can expect over the next 5 years to be at a 74, given the range that you're, or the projected budgets that has been allocated to them. Some things to understand about this graph, again, is the timeline. We're only looking at a 5-year window. The other thing is inflation can really sneak up on us and cause prices to go up. But given what we understand right now with the marketplace, this is what we're seeing for the next 5 years. Our recommendations. You want to update and continue to update your pavement management system. It's a great tool to be able to convey information just like this. Fortunately, you're part of the MTC, or Metropolitan Transportation Commission's jurisdiction, so they give you a grant to be able to do that, because then they're able to use your information, combine it with the other 109 agencies, and collect additional funding from the California Transportation Commission. It would be really helpful for planning purposes to consider developing a multi-year pavement expenditure plan based on your budgeting, and really focus in on your critical point type of a management style. Focus the limited funding that you have available to preserve your critical assets. As mentioned, your arterials are already at an 88, but pavement doesn't stay the same. It continues to deteriorate, and so you want to maintain that with, you don't want to just ignore them. You want to do some kind of maintenance to keep those critical assets in good condition. And then you always should be looking for grant opportunities to assist you with adding to your pavement management dollars. And then many cities and agencies throughout California are looking for additional funding sources, sales tax measures, grant measures to use to infuse that. Like if you wanted to take care of that $3.5 million and get up into the 80 range, they would be looking at those type of opportunities. And that takes us to the end of our presentation, and be happy to answer any questions that you have.
That was very interesting. It's the first time.
Fun?
Who knew that roads could be so interesting? So a few questions. Our PCI of 73, how does that compare with the rest of Marin?
There are other parts of Marin that aren't quite as blessed as you are right now. I think of, Tiburon also has a higher PCI in the 70s. Larkspur at one time was the worst city in the whole 109 jurisdictions within MTC. I think their average was a 37, and they are now up in the 80s, and they use some bonding measures to be able to infuse and improve. The other agencies are in the 50s and 60s right now. I don't remember the exact numbers. we can get those for you.
That's,
and
it's good enough just to know that we're doing fine compared with other agencies. The second question I had was, as you say, we're spending about 310,000 a year right now, and I'm assuming that's our sort of 5-year-ish profile for the, is that correct?
Yeah, and it's actually 320.
Okay.
And that's where there are two funds for pavement management. One is the paving, I think it's just called street maintenance, and then the other one is called spot repairs, which is another 40,000 or 45,000, and that's kind of gets lumped together. So we have that available.
Okay. And so my question from that was, why would we spend more than that? Because I can see your ideal scenario is spending multiple millions, but we're always getting to the point of doing the repairs before you have critical deterioration. Why would you spend more other than to have perfect roads?
are you talking about,
The 2 point whatever spend or whatever.
right?
Why would you do that?
To go up into the
Yeah.
80 range? There are two reasons that I can think of. It's going to put you even in more of the more of the maintenance mode, more solidly in the maintenance mode. At 70 is considered the bottom of the maintenance mode. When you get below 70, it starts deteriorating further. So you're giving yourself more room. Additionally, the other thing is with the SB1 funding that is available for roads and based on our gas tax, if you're up into the 80s, then the restrictions on how to use those funds are reduced. And so you're able to use them for other things than just roads. They're saying if you're in the 80s, then you're doing a great job on your pavements and you're okay.
Okay. But it sounds like, Tony, that we always intervene and get in before our roads deteriorate to the 70 or whatever it is that you said was the break point.
Yes, definitely. That's the aim with every year's project.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I don't know whether you can answer this final question, but I was just curious. Obviously, the bigger the truck, the more the deterioration in our roads. And given the amount of Amazon and FedEx and UPS that we have all day long running around Belvedere, do you know any communities that impose some kind of levy for those deliveries on the homeowner?
They haven't imposed those that I have seen yet. We've been involved in a few refuge impact studies where the trash trucks are recognized as being more challenging for roads to handle. And so they actually impose a refuge impact fee.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
I have one question. I have a number of questions for staff, which may bring you back later. But my question for you, and first, thank you very much. It was much more interesting than I thought it was going to be, and I can understand why you get excited about it. But generally, I'm wondering with global warming and climate change, and the projections for the future. Can you talk to us a little bit about the technology changes that you're aware of to the right product at the right time? You were mentioning, so we're using oils, synthetic oils, instead of the original asphalt, for example. What's happening for the future, and how does that affect our 5-year cost projections?
Great question. And it isn't an easy one to wrap our head around because when we start working with new technology, we really don't know how well it's going to perform until about 20 years later. And so we impose the technology and we play with it, we work with it, and we're tweaking things here and there and seeing how in the long run they really perform. Because remember, when a pavement deteriorates, it's two different ways. There's not only just the loading of what it's seeing from the heavy vehicles, but it's also the environmental effects. And that's really hard to simulate for a long period of time without just putting it on the road and just seeing how it performs. But we're always making a lot of improvements. I think of in 2009, Caltrans revised a lot of their specifications to work on aggregate quality specifications as well as oil performance is what they're looking for, certain ranges that they're looking for, that within this temperature range, it has to have these type of engineered properties. And so we're making advancements always in those areas. Some of the things that are really good when you start thinking about environmental impact is we're always looking at recycling opportunities as well. And pavements lend themselves very, very much so to recycling. Things like grinding up the road in place, we call it full depth reclamation, and recompacting it, creating new base, getting rid of all of the stresses or the cracking that's on the road, and then putting a new layer of asphalt over the top of that. And you get a 20-year road without having to reconstruct it. We're also looking at adding rubberized tires so that we can take that out of our landfills and work with that with pavements as well. So we're looking at all of those technologies. The problem is it just takes time to see how they really perform over time, but we are making progress on that.
Well, keep us posted on that. I think that's very interesting. My last question may be one for staff, but, and this really comes from the community. We hear a lot of complaints about the utilities tearing up our roads seriatim. We'll get PG&E, and then we'll get the water, and then someone else will be, the sewer will be tearing up the same road over and over and over again. And so I'm asking you sort of regionally, and then Tony, perhaps locally, is there a way that the communities recapture the cost of the utilities continually tearing up our roads? It's a little different than the loading impact that you were talking about. And I'll be asking staff some questions about impact fees later. But this utility damage is one that comes up over and over and over again.
There's none that I've seen where they actually go after the utility and say, you've messed up my street. You've taken a perfectly good street and put a utility trench down in the middle of it. What I see, and it speaks more to the planning part of things, where if you get a longer term plan, a 5-year plan that you're always working on, then you can inform the agency or the public, whatever it might be, PG&E or water or whoever it is, that we're coming, you better fix what you need to fix. Cities have put on, imposed moratoriums on their streets. That is a way to be able to collect fees. We never talked about that, Tony. I don't know if the city of Belvedere has moratoriums, but the way that those works is if you cut into the street within that moratorium time and you were notified, then there are impacts that you can collect. So
Yeah, and
That's really interesting.
think about.
Yep, and I can jump in there. The city does have moratoriums on streets that have been recently paved or slurry sealed. I think it's 5 years for a paved street and 3 years for a slurry sealed street. And right now, the fees for any encroachment permits to do work on those streets are significantly higher. And then there are county standards for repairs that have to be made on those roads.
I think San Rafael Avenue really suffers.
Yep.
But anyway, thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again. I have to agree with my fellow council members. It was very interesting. So,
Glad you liked it.
thank you. Do I ask for public comment? Okay, so is
I
there?
have one thing to add,
Oh,
just
sure.
so that people are aware that it's coming up. The 2024 road maintenance project is currently out to bid, and we're hoping to get some good quotes and hopefully have a contract for approval at the next city council meeting.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Cooper, I do have some questions for staff. Is
Oh.
this the appropriate time to ask them?
Yes, thanks.
So thank you very much, Mr. Ryrie. So Tony, thank you so much for all you do at Public Works. It's presentations like these that make us sort of inform us how much detail you have to know about so many different things. I understand we are taking another view or having a consultant take a view of our fees, our fee arrangements. And so I think that this presentation might inform that process a little bit and provide our consultant additional data that would be useful in informing the city as to whether we're imposing or requesting sufficient road impact fees for not just the project as a whole, but really taking a deep dive into what kind of trucks are damaging our streets. I thought the slide Mr. Ryrie showed about the different types of trucks compared to a Chevy Blazer was really, really interesting, and it somehow quantifies the harm that we may be looking at too broadly in determining what the appropriate fees would be. So I just offer that. The second thing was I was really surprised about the issue of the garbage trucks and how multiple deliveries per week could impact our roads. And I know that obviously homeowners that have multiple pickups per week pay our hauler a higher rate for those services. But I'm wondering whether that additional, I didn't realize it was such an additional impact on our streets. So that's something that our fee consultant might ask about. So funding, my understanding is we get AA funds. Do those come from TAM, right? Or are those MTC?
TAM, yes.
So those
and
are,
I have the
I should know
finance
since I'm
director
our
here who's
commissioner.
definitely-
But they all say that they're, all the alphabet agencies are claiming credit for the same amount of money. So I just wanted to drill down. So that comes from TAM.
Correct.
And then we have an MTC grant. So the MTC grant is not an overlay over the AA funds. What is the MTC grant that Mr. Ryrie was referring to? I'm not familiar with getting money from MTC.
Well, the MTC grant covers this PTAP report, the assessment in the report
Okay.
that the city has every few years.
Okay, so the funds from MTC the grant from MTC is not for implementation of the recommendations, it's just for doing this initial study.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Then we get SB1 funds.
Yes, we do.
I thought I saw that in the budget. Then we get road impact fees.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Am I missing? I'm just trying to find out what the funding is so important for this. And we're always really concerned about
Yeah, so we get
spending our
about,
taxpayer dollars. And so I just want to know where we're getting this $300,000.
so we get about 58,000 from the SB1 funds. And then the road impact fees come, it's a 0.75%, I believe, from, and I hope I state this correctly, from the building permits. It's based on the permits.
Okay,
And it's 0.75%.
okay. And our AA funds are based on the number of miles of road per city, as I recall from the chart. It would
That's
be
correct.
interesting to compare I think we saw 11 miles. Is that what we saw? It would be interesting to compare because I have wondered in the past year whether the chart that drives that AA funding is accurate. And one thing that I believe city manager and I have talked about is whether the amount of road, the mileage that's being used includes, I think it's pretty old data, and we want to make sure that that includes roads that were previously private and are now public roads.
We can check with Tam and make sure their
Accurate.
miles are correct.
Or updated. They may be correct for the data they have, but they may not know about changes. So,
Correct.
okay, thank you very
Right.
much. Sorry for all the questions, but I think this is a really important topic for our citizens.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone in the audience have a question regarding pavement?
Is it possible to get the PowerPoint back up here on the screen? Good evening, Vice Mayor Cooper, Councilmember Wilkinson, and good to see you, Nancy. Pleasure to build on your excellent questions regarding this presentation. As soon as I can see the slides.
Would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sorry, I'm Derek Denniston. I live on 101 Bella Vista, been here 25 years, love the city. And I have a unique, not unique, my perspective on roads is as a road cyclist. So it's fascinating to hear this background. Okay. No glasses. No, I'll just toggle through. Thank you. Okay, down arrow, right? Side arrow. No, oh, okay. Yeah, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Is 9,400 pounds an accurate estimate of the Mill Valley refuse trucks that we all see once a week?
So what that is the number of Chevy S10.
Oh, my bad. So is 9343 times the weight of an S10 Blazer an accurate estimate of our actual trucks?
That's what a typical garbage truck.
I asked about our city.
Not specific to-
Okay, next slide. Are any of these pictures taken here in the city of Belvedere? Next slide. Next slide. Did you personally or anybody from your firm witness any of these specific distresses on the streets of the city of Belvedere? Could you provide more detail?
Each street has a PCI.
I didn't ask about PCI. I'm asking, are these common pavement?
Excuse me, Vice Mayor, my apologies. This is an opportunity for public comments or questions on the presentation provided, not necessarily an opportunity to interrogate our presenter. But if you have any comments or questions, I think we're all ears.
I have questions, only questions. As an avid cyclist who's ridden the roads, my personal opinion is the city of Belvedere is by far and away above the best streets in all of the county and perhaps the entire state. And I don't understand why we're getting this presentation when they are in such great shape. I think the staff and the city do a tremendous job, and I'm confused by the presentation. I'm happy to sit down. I have several more questions, but I think you see where I'm going.
Okay.
I question why he's here, why we're listening to this, what we paid for, whether there's any data whatsoever that's specific to the city of Belvedere, or whether that data is recent or from a desktop exercise that was performed by some other firm.
Okay, Thank you for that question and your comments.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Tony, didn't you say at the beginning that this was something that happens on a 5-year cycle and that this report specifically occurred this past May?
Yes, yeah. So the work was done by technicians from PEI who came out and walked the streets of Belvedere and identified locations where they took observations of the streets, and that's how they developed the PCI score. And those defects that were listed are typical road defects that they use to come up with their score for each road.
And Tony, this is grant funded and the money has to be spent this way.
Correct. Yeah.
Thanks.
So the report was paid for by grant money, and the grant money could only go toward this report being done, which we're required to do every 5 years. But we're certainly glad that you like our roads because certainly our Public Works Department does spend a huge amount of time, effort in keeping them in great shape. Unfortunately, I think there would be a few people on Corinthian Island that may not agree with you. We've definitely had issues over there over and over again, and we're working to try to alleviate those issues over there as well. So, but thank you, and I hope that answered some of your concerns. Okay, is there anyone else here in the room that would like to comment? Anyone on Zoom?
Vice Mayor Cooper, we have Mr. Rothman.
Okay. Dr. Rothman, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. One, in the curve that was presented, one could get the impression that if you did the coating, that you wouldn't get the further damage. Because it said if you don't do the coating, then it moves on to the next stage. The implication of that would be if you just keep coating it, you'll never go on to the next stage. I find that difficult to believe. And I don't think it's so, and that may not be the impression that was intended, but that's the impression that one could obtain. The second thing is that I'm interested that the road impact fee is based upon the cost of the project, which is part of the situation. But if you have a big, heavy cement truck that's delivering to a project that's at the end of Belvedere Island, compared to one that's down by the lagoon, obviously the heavy truck is breaking up the road over a much longer distance. It's breaking up a much longer distance of road than the truck that's simply coming to build a home on the lagoon. So I would urge that when we get into the impact fees, that be taken into consideration, because that's a real factor. The other thing is the garbage truck impact fee. I'm sorry to say it's a mirage, because it's a pass-through fee. In other words, if you charge the garbage company $1 million for the garbage trucks on the roads, that's what's called a pass-through. And then when they come for the rates, that's considered a cost of operations, and then it simply gets passed on to the people who are having their garbage picked up, which is all of us. I hope that's clear, but it's a mirage. You're just taking the money is being taken from the residents, just in a different form. It's being taken in the garbage bill. So the garbage company doesn't care how much you charge them for an impact fee, because they just put that into their fees that we all pay. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Rothman.
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And I think at this point we will move on to the next item on the agenda. And that is the interviews of, we have 4 applicants for appointment to the Parks, Open Space and Lanes Committee. The 4 applicants are Marika Bergson, Louise Rathjen, John Sherm, and Brian Chase. Just as a quick background, this committee is composed of 5 volunteer members. We had 2 members retire, Kathy Pearson and Jean Borden, and Jenna Watson, who was chair of that committee, moved over to the Planning Commission. Thank you again to all three for their commitment and tireless work on behalf of Parks, Open Space, and Lane. By them leaving, that left 3 seats to fill. We filled 1 seat in June by appointing Wayne Stacy, leaving 2 seats for us to fill tonight. The new members that are chosen will join Wayne Stacy and our 2 other current members, Nick Markham and Charlie Harrington. Of the 4 applicants, only 3 are here this evening to be interviewed. Unfortunately, applicant Louise Rathjen became sick and she's unable to attend this evening. And to let you know the process, we conduct the interviews, then we hold our regular meeting, and at the end of that meeting, or this meeting, we will make the decision. If you prefer not to stay through the meeting, which is completely understandable and actually common practice, you will be contacted after the meeting to let you know the decision of the council. Of course, you're all welcome to stay as long as you'd like and hear more fascinating reports, not about pavement, but who knows what's next. So, okay, so at this point, we will begin our interviews, and I would like to invite Marika Bergson to come forward and tell us a little bit something about why you'd like to sit on the Parks and Open Space Committee. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Vice Mayor Cooper and fellow council members. Happy to be here. Marika Bergson, just I guess a quick overview. Obviously, I submitted a letter and as well as my resume, so you have that background. I'm an 18-year resident of 5 Edgewater Road. Here in the town, we raised our 3 kids here, used the parks and the youth activities all around. They're all now adults, so that was a while ago. In my current professional job, I do residential property management here in Marin County of small rental properties. I think I just had a couple of quick things to summarize what I already wrote. I feel like I have, this opportunity really spoke to me because it combines my personal interest, my professional expertise, and sort of my volunteer commitment. Personally, I'm an avid user of all of our parks, open spaces, and lanes. I'm an exerciser on all the lanes on Belvedere. That's my favorite thing. I've played tennis on our tennis courts, and of course, I attend tons of events and enjoy our parks and open spaces. Professionally, my career has been all about open space and public space management and operations. I was the executive director of Slide Ranch. I have run nonprofits that did school gardens, and both here in Marin County and before that in Southern California, all over Los Angeles County, working with school districts and various cities on those operations. And most recently, I worked for Girl Scouts in Northern California, and I ran all membership and volunteer support and training, which involved also how they use both public open space in general, as well as things like our fabulous camps, of which 2 are in Marin County, in Arequipa and Botheen, which are up outside of Fairfax. So that's my professional background. I was executive director, and at Girl Scouts, I was a senior vice president. So always in senior management, responsible for major decisions around whether it was around safety, around operations, budgeting, finance, et cetera. And finally, I'm an active and passionate community volunteer. I just wrapped up 6 years serving on the Belvedere Lagoon Property Owners Association board. So that freed me up to think about where I wanted to contribute my time and energy in our community. And this opportunity really spoke to me, given my background. The one last piece I hadn't mentioned is deeper in my background behind nonprofit management is that I am was an environmental attorney who specialized in land use, and environmental law. So my background was all about administrative. I spent a lot of time as an attorney working with communities, with city councils, commissions, et cetera, getting things done. And that is what I would like to bring to this role. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question for Marika?
Yes, I do. Thank you for stepping up, Marika. I wanted to have you tell us a little bit more about your fundraising. I imagine Slide Ranch gave you lots of opportunities, but perhaps some of your other positions. One thing we have been looking at over the last few years, certainly my tenure on council, is this idea of public-private partnerships to enhance the social infrastructure that really can be gained through the proper use, the maximum use of our public spaces. So our most successful ventures, I think, in the last 8 years or so, have really been a combination of matching city funds with private fundraising. So can you tell us a little bit about any experience you have in that regard?
Well, that specifically, sort of that opportunity and idea was why I mentioned fundraising both tonight and in my letters, because I do think that that is an amazing way for cities and other public agencies to be able to maximize what they can do. And we have amazing assets here, but they need care and love and investment, both to maintain them as well as improve them, expand them, whatever is on the city's strategic plan. So fundraising is a huge piece of course, what I did as most specifically as a nonprofit executive director for Girl Scouts. We sold a lot of cookies. So in that one, I was invested in eating cookies, but fundraising more directly, whether was a huge part of the work I did as executive director, both at Slide Ranch as well as at Growing Great and in my school garden programs. And so it included both fundraising with private donors. It included a lot of fundraising through grant applications of both private, personal foundations, including many of the larger community ones that sort of serve Bay Area interests. And they, my particular expertise, of course, since I was working in Slide Ranch and before that in School Gardens, was all about foundations that and individuals that are interested in environmental investments in open spaces, environment, getting people out and making sure that they have safe and accessible places to be there and improving those assets in our communities. Working through School Gardens, it was a lot of public-private partnerships, but in that case with school districts, where we would be raising money to create green spaces, particularly in underserved, lower income urban communities. How do we green these urban schools, provide opportunities for kids to both have green spaces to utilize, as well as we were doing a lot about school gardens, both to learn about nature as well as nutrition. So I'm a passionate believer in that, and that has been a huge part of my professional work. And I feel like I have a lot of connections through that work, both sort of immediately regionally in Marin County, because that was where I was doing it, but also Greater Bay Area. There are a ton of San Francisco-based foundations that support, and even East Bay foundations that support environmental efforts and public spaces in Marin County.
Oh, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Hi, Marika. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I just have a couple of quick questions. The first one was just to see whether you had attended any Parks and Open Spaces meetings or spoken with existing members or anything, just to get a better feel for the committee.
I have not spoken with them. As I mentioned, I just came off the board of the BLPOA. And so I was very focused on that volunteer opportunity. I did actually, though, follow them. I never spoke with anybody, but I sort of would avidly follow them. And as I would be monitoring sort of what was going on in our city government, in part because I am a big user of our various assets. So, I would read things. I would occasionally, follow up and, see, particularly when they appeared to you at the city council. In fact, most recently, I watched it when Jenna, who was the chair, presented her the strategic plan and the budget for the year. Like, I watched that, and I have watched that in previous years out of personal interest. But no, I have not spoken to anybody or attended a meeting.
Okay. And then from it sounds like you've been following closer than many people. Are there any sort of immediate ideas that come to mind for you in things you'd like to see happen, or in terms of the work that's being
So,
done?
you know, as I mentioned, you know, my work has always been sort of the combination of you have to start by being sure that the assets that you have, especially when you have public using them, and at Slide Ranch, and a lot of people think of Slide Ranch as being a camp. You know, you send your kids to camp, but it was actually open to the public 365 days a year because it was part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And the other school gardens that we had, similarly, they were on school campuses, people were on them. So the number one thing I think is that you start with is safety and maintenance and maintaining things to be sure that they are safe and they are accessible. And so, you know, that would be, of course, one of the things. And in particular, I think on that, I am thinking of the lanes, which I know extraordinarily well, every single inch of them on a regular basis, and wondering, you know, where are we with those? What are our expectations? What is our strategic plan? I think our parks get a lot more attention, and particularly some of them have gotten some attention recently. So I know that they've gotten some, you know, recent improvements and investments. So there are other places, other smaller parkettes and open space areas in the lanes. I think that would be a starting place for me to I think for me more to understand. We talked about paving tonight. I actually thought that was very interesting. You know, adjacent to pavings are sidewalks and steps and things like that. And so that's why I was sort of interested listening to him, because I think some of those analyses you would put to evaluating and planning for what you wanted to do. And I, not having been a part of it, I don't know where that is. So I would start with learning where we are and how we approach those things, and then see where what I felt was needed and participate in a process to understand that.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming tonight and appreciate you stepping up to serve in Belvedere again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, I would like to invite Brian Chase to come forward. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and we'll probably just have a few questions for you, but if you'd like to start off with a little background and why you're interested in joining this committee.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much, Vice Mayor Cooper and council members. It's an honor to be considered, and very excited to apply for this appointment. I grew up in Marin County in San Anselmo, graduated from San Domenico School, then went to St. Ignatius, and then down to Los Angeles to study public administration, homeland security, and cinematic arts down at in Los Angeles at USC. I, since that time, have worked in several different roles in the public and private sector that I think might be useful for the city of Belvedere. I worked about 10 years at AT&T in public affairs in Sacramento, working on a number of projects pertaining chiefly to public safety communications across the state. Before that, I worked with the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce, and also served on the city's Social Services Commission for 3 years, developing a number of community projects between the business community and the city of Santa Monica. I also worked with the Los Angeles Community College District and was the executive director for the interim executive director for the Foundation for Pierce College. Before that, I worked in water treatment for a company called Nalco, now part of Ecolab, and was very excited to be a part of some hydropolitical issues, but chiefly improving industrial processes in water reclamation and reuse. So love the city of Belvedere. I'm an avid user as well of our local parks, tennis courts in particular. I've taken the lessons through the ranch. I am a newly minted docent for China Cabin with Landmarks, and a lector at St. Hilary Catholic Church. So it's a wonderful community to be a part of, and happy to be here this evening to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Anyone have anything to ask?
Um, Yes, I do. Can you tell us a little bit more about your fundraising activities? Following on my question to Marika earlier. It sounds like you have had some experience with that. And I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. With the Santa Monica Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization, so we had to fundraise continually. My role as the Director of Government Affairs, I had to fund my own position by raising money from businesses who sat on what we call the Business Roundtable. So very civically active organizations, hospitals, think tanks, in Santa Monica hotels. Hospitality is a big industry down there, entertainment. They would participate in the business council that I would host quarterly, and then that paid for our government affairs program with the chamber. With Pierce College as the interim leader for their foundation, we were hit with significant state budget cuts. This was in 2012, and at Pierce College, which originally was an agricultural college founded in the 1940s, not as large a program today, but an important part of the history and loved by the local community because of all the open spaces protected for the animals. That was at risk of closing. That was the first item on the chopping block. And so we reached out to the business community, much like I had done in Santa Monica and also with the Social Services Commission. Wallace Annenberg is a big fan of animals and doing what she can to protect them. And so working with her, we were in her foundation, we were able to provide enough money to care for the animals through paid internships that the students were very glad to take on and keep the farm in operation on campus through that difficult time. Several other areas. Like I said, also the other side, AT&T. I didn't have to do any nonprofit fundraising, but there were certainly a lot of nonprofits came to us. We also were part of a historic public-private partnership, the FirstNet First Responder Network, where public dollars were made available to build out a public safety network on top of AT&T's existing network. And then that was the cost that AT&T more than matched that with, were able to be recuperated through using the commercial network for our customers and prioritizing public safety communications in a crisis. So a very complex P3 environment that was really exciting to be a part of.
Interesting. Thank you so much.
Evening, Brian. I'm going to ask the same questions as I asked Marika as well, just to be fair. So just to sort of ascertain your engagement so far in parks and open spaces, whether you've attended or watched any meetings, chatted with any of the existing board members just to get a sense of what they do, and any ideas that have immediately come to your mind when you're looking at our lanes and open spaces.
I have watched meetings online. I learned about the opportunity through the ARC. Haven't had the opportunity to meet any of the existing members of that committee. But I give infrastructure and facilities a lot of thought, personally and professionally. And I do think there are some opportunities. So there's plenty of opportunities, I think, with maintaining the lanes and striking that balance where I think form and function are always important to take in mind. And I think some of the elements of cities like Belvedere are that there's a patina to some of the infrastructure that is actually really desirable. Sometimes you don't want everything to look brand new, but you want it to have the functionality and safety aspects of items that are brand new. So I think a lot of the improvements and upgrades to lanes, the lanes throughout the city could take that into account and maybe have a little bit more of the historic look to a city founded in 1896. I think it's also exciting to hear the conversations around what's going to happen with Millennium Park and that being such a unique space with its incline, whether that has alternatives to stairs to go up and down, or I've heard a slide proposed, which I think is an interesting concept and very exciting. And I also think that the shoreline access is something that could be probably much improved. And accessibility is something I think that is very important for any city. I think there's a direct relationship between accessibility and safety and infrastructure and the overall well-being and happiness of a city's residents. And so I think it's been tremendous in terms of the city's done a tremendous job with regard to landscaping. The parks, of course, are beautiful. I live right across the street from Land Company Park and enjoy being able to use that every day. So yeah, so there are some ideas that I do have, but really just very kind of initial in the brainstorming process.
Thank you very much.
Well, this is my little shtick. Since you said you learned about this opportunity through the ARC, I'm wondering if you receive our monthly email newsletter that reports on everything going on in Belvedere. And if you don't receive it in your email, I would encourage you to sign up this evening with our city clerk, because then you would have found out about it within our own Belvedere newsletter.
Straight from the source.
Yeah.
Yes,
straight
I
from the
wouldn't have
source.
had to get it through the newspaper.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
y-
okay. I
no,
don't mean to put you on the
all
spot. I'm just pushing the
I get the
newsletter.
agendas and the meeting
Right.
announcements, but I haven't gotten a newsletter.
It's just another box that you check. So
Oh,
we'll get you on there.
I'm gonna have to check that box.
Okay.
All right, thank
And
you.
then you mentioned that it sounds as though your adult life was primarily in Los Angeles. So I wondered when you had moved up north or to Belvedere.
You know, actually, it's misleading. Because we've spoken about a number of fundraising opportunities and work that I did while I was down there. I actually most of my professional life has been in Northern California.
Oh, okay.
I was based in Sacramento for seven years. Worked in San Francisco for 2 or 3 years. I was in Santa Monica for 3 years. And even at USC, I studied in the graduate program at the USC State Capitol Center in Sacramento. So my graduate education was right down the street from the Capitol. So I would say that about 20 years probably have been in Northern California, and of course all of my childhood.
And you moved to Belvedere recently, or?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Mhm. Yeah,
okay.
5 months ago.
Oh, 5 months ago.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Grew up
Well,
in San
welcome.
Anselmo, but thank you very much. But it doesn't feel terribly new, because growing up, some of my best friends lived in Belvedere, so there were a lot of play dates going back to kindergarten right down the street.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thanks again for throwing your hat in and being willing to help the community.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay. And next, I would like to call up John Sherm. Please come forward and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be on this committee.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to follow up the very, very qualified individuals. And just wanted to say that, primary reason for wanting to do this, being a relatively new transplant to Belvedere, we moved in 3 years ago, but have been in the Bay Area for 17 years, just fallen for the city, want to help in any way possible, and I'm very much open to this or any other opportunities in the future, should this one not be the one that pans out. So just wanted to throw that out there. Background wise, I have a corporate background. I've been at Google for 17 years. I'm primarily working on their board of directors management. So very kind of familiar with stakeholder management, having to balance perspectives of, many perspectives. My background on kind of outdoor spaces and public spaces comes from kind of a serial volunteering background. Grew up in Ohio. I stayed very close to the community there, have been very involved with a private school there through their visiting committee. And, really just kind of involved with fundraising there to kind of get ahead of the questions that might come. Some other fundraising activities that I've had have been through Middlebury College with their Art in Public Place program, and through Red Oak Camp that I spent many summers at through their scholarship committee. And if I compare and contrast those, there's a big difference. The Art in Public Places, there's kind of very big splashy projects, often with very motivated benefactors. Probably the easiest fundraising to do. And, I think with some of the natural beauty, and when I look at things like our parks here, it may be easier to get people on tangible projects that they can touch and feel, and not as easy to get maintenance on things like or donations for things like maintenance projects. The scholarship program that I've worked on, it actually has been very challenging to get scholarships through or get benefactors to that. So it's been kind of having to take a different approach from something that is tangible. Then looking at Belvedere as a community, there's just so many things that make it beautiful, and so many assets that want to protect, maintain. And I think that's kind of the first thing that I would want to look at and learn through the committee. I have talked to Charlie Harrington. I learned through the Belvedere Breeze newsletter about the opportunity. And just
Yay.
thinking about like other places for education, other places for benchmarking, other communities that have very unique features. How can we connect with those communities, learn from them, try to bring that into some of the programs that we have? The list that came from me, I used to live on Telegraph Hill, right by the Filbert Steps, and just thought that was a very interesting, more private maintained program there, but kind of interesting to see what the community had done there. Having spent time in communities like Mackinac, Chautauqua in New York, there's just a lot of like interesting quirks and features to those communities that I think we can make connections to, learn from, and bring forth to the maintenance and the ongoing kind of preservation of Belvedere's beautiful parks and open spaces. And then just think about community in general. How can we, through the fundraising that I've done before, I found that if you can keep engaging the community, it's very helpful. And there's a lot of things that might bring people to the park in a low impact way. Something like a ice cream truck once a month, where the proceeds go to a community fund, working with the Belvedere Foundation, Community Foundation. Are there opportunities for more regular engagement and kind of getting people to understand what's on the agenda, what's coming next? Is it the lanes that need maintenance? Is it the park that needs maintenance? So really just looking at kind of non-obtrusive ways to bring the community in. As a father of 2 young children, is there a way to kind of bring families in? So potentially, one local performer, Music with Megan, having heard the park and having families pay to come do that, and a portion of the proceeds goes to the community foundation here for the preservation of the open spaces. So those are just some kind of quick ideas that I had. Any other questions?
Well, you've answered my fundraising question.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple more. Thank you for stepping up. And I was very interested in your taking advantage of the opportunity to go to the park when you were house hunting. I thought that was quite interesting, and certainly is something that would inform some of the work on the committee that I hadn't, since I've been here since '86. It's been a long time since I was house hunting here, but I thought that was an excellent idea, and one that really goes to the heart of what the Parks and Open Space and Lanes Committee tries to do. It's also interesting that you mentioned the ice cream truck, because that was actually one of the ice cream social was one of the fundraisers for the playground that your children are now enjoying, and it was really a great day and a lot of fun. And I thought it was also good that you talked to at least one of the committee members, Charlie Harrington, who is really a great member of this committee. So
I love his idea on the slides. I think it's great.
that's great. I don't have any other questions right now. Thank
Okay,
you very much for stepping up.
Thank you.
John, the same here. Firstly, thank you for stepping up. And I think you answered all of my questions as well. So I don't think I have anything extra. I like some of the initial ideas that you suggested there. So thank you for those.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again also for coming this evening and putting up with our questions. It was nice to see you.
Absolutely. Great to see you all. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I would like to thank everyone who came this evening, and no matter what happens after our deliberation, I hope you will all stay involved in all kinds of Belvedere committees going forward. We always have the need for volunteers, and now your 3 names are at the top of the list. So, but seriously, we do appreciate it so much. So as I said, we're going to carry on with our regular meeting and get back to you afterwards. Unless you feel like staying, you're more than welcome. So thanks again to the 3 of you for coming this evening. Okay, I'd like to move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar.
Excuse me, Vice
Oh,
Mayor, my
sorry.
apologies. I think we do just want to make sure we take public comment on the last item.
Oh, shoot. Okay, thanks.
Not at all.
Is there anyone who wants to comment on the 3 people that just walked out of the room? We can't. Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Dennison.
No worries. Hi, Nancy. I had so much fun serving on the Lanes and Open Space Subcommittee, I think it was, with your husband, Brian. It's the essence of what I think defines one of the most unique, charming, amazing characters of the island, in this city generally. And I think it's a resource that deserves a little more investment, especially to realize the long-held but amazing goal to get real pedestrian access from the tip of the island down to the tip of the shoreline. You know where I'm talking about. I forget the name of the place. It hasn't seen much improvement in the recent years, and I think it should be a top priority. And I think 5 months of residency in this city is insufficient, just simply insufficient to appreciate that unique character of the island.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have a comment on the Parks and Open Space Lanes Committee? Seeing none, do we have any on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are considered to be non-controversial unless any item is specifically removed by any member of the council. The consent calendar will be adopted in one motion. Items removed will be considered in the sequence as they appear on the agenda. Did you want to?
I request to pull item 4E.
Okay, we'll pull 4E. Is there anything else that needs to be pulled? No, in that case, can I get a motion to adopt consent calendar items A through D?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
I'm
Oh,
sorry again,
Yes.
Vice Mayor. I just want to make sure we take public comment before we vote on those items.
Oh, okay. Is there any public comment on items A through D? Anywhere?
There's no hands raised.
Okay. My apologies again for the
That's okay.
interruption.
No, I needed the help. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion passes. So since we pulled HE, Mr. Zadnik, would you like to begin, or Nancy, would you like to begin the discussion? I didn't know if we
Yes.
wanted Mr. Zadnik to explain
I
what
can
was
just
going on.
I can just zero in on my
Okay.
my thoughts. I think this is was an important civil grand jury report, and I first wanted it pulled just to highlight the importance to our community. There's a lot of activity going on both at the state and the county level on this, and I would like some clarification about our participation in the pilot program under AB 1778, I believe it is. I think that would be useful for the community to have tonight, and I think that to that end, we might want to slightly amend a couple of our responses, but narrowing it just to that issue. I would like to hear from the city manager and then perhaps talk about some of the responses. It's not elaborate, but I think we can improve them a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say thank you, Councilmember Chemnitzer, for bringing that up. Generally, how we like to write these reports based on the recommendations that we've heard from the grand jury. They're recommending some very specific actions that we take really as collaboration, as an entire group with the rest of the county to develop an ordinance, further restricting the use of e-bikes within our cities and largely through the county. I think, in talking with the chief of police, I know that all cities aren't on the same page regarding this topic. So it's a little bit, I guess, presumptive of us to say, yes, we are going to implement something. For example, recommendation 1 they have is that we put the ordinance into effect by December 31st of 2024. And, I mentioned in the response that Belvedere recognizes that there is an issue here with health and safety of e-bikes, and we need to consider a countywide response in tandem with what is happening at the state level. However, like I said, it's a bit presumptive for us to go beyond that, not knowing where the outcome of that committee or that group effort is going to be. So in backing up, yes, we're eager to have that discussion. We will support that type of dialogue with the rest of the county. Can't really say more than that necessarily at this stage until we have those meetings. One other point I wanted to bring up was a correspondence issue that we heard regarding just procedurally how we respond to some of these items. R1 was recommended that we have an exact date, since our finding was that this recommendation requires further analysis. And that's correct. I think it was implied perhaps in some of the other responses from the city that we were going to adhere to that December 31st, 2024 date. And meet that type of schedule. However, it wasn't expressly stated in that first response. So I do have a bit of language we can add to the response to make sure that we don't get this kickback from the grand jury.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that answers your questions completely though.
It answers all but the last. And I did have a bit of marginalia about the will be by December 31st. And in agreeing to that date, it might be helpful to add a little bit of a language that we do intend to collaborate and coordinate with other jurisdictions in the county to achieve the goals set forth in the recommendation. Something to that. They're looking for us. It seemed to me, I read the report this afternoon, and it did seem to me that what they're really asking for is for us to take affirmative steps to collaborate with other jurisdictions on this a matter of public safety. The need for uniformity and consistency among the various cities, I think, is important and really can be captured, I would say, in a response that merely says that Belvedere fully intends to cooperate, coordinate, and collaborate. If that is in fact our intention. The one that surprised me was our response number 4. The recommendation says that the Board of Supervisors should explore options for additional funding for student and public education in Marin County. Our response about e-bike safety and our response says it's not warranted. And I thought that was an odd choice of words, perhaps. It might not have been exactly what we mean. It really sounds like we think it doesn't matter. And I don't think that's our intent here. I think that we want to recognize that we agree that the education is needed. Public education, student and public education is very much needed. It's paramount, really, that the public be better educated about the dangers of Class 2 e-bikes ridden by children who are under 16. When the chart in the report, and the media has also, IJ and other media have also reported the statistics that the ER doctors are saying this is a huge problem. MCCMC also received a report this month by Vice Mayor Cooper and I were there, and that addressed this issue. I think that's the subject of some of the correspondence tonight. But I would really like to see Belvedere saying, we agree with this premise. And if the grand jury is tasking the county to come up with funding, they could very easily come to the jurisdictions to implement part of that recommendation themselves. And so I think some clarification there might be necessary. I have seen and I have heard from residents in Belvedere that we have children racing down the streets through stop signs on e-bikes. I think they're great for many purposes, an alternative source of transportation. But I think that we can help educate parents and the community before some sort of tragedy occurs. Thank you.
If I may, Councilmember Kemnitzer, if I could just add just one slight point of information, perhaps you're already aware of this, but I did just want to point out the AB 1778 noted in the grand jury report has not yet passed the legislature.
So yes, I'm on the legislative committee, so I knew that had not passed. It was originally proposed by Damon Connolly, I believe, and who has backed away from the original text. But I have heard about this pilot project and that there is a compromise that that rather than, and prefatory to a statewide mandate suggested in the original language of 1778, that Marin County might be, in fact, the pilot project for that. So one reason I pulled this tonight was really to emphasize that I think Belvedere would certainly cooperate in being part of such a pilot project.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that you're already aware of that. I did just want to point out that had not yet passed because given that it still needs to be adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor, the December 31st deadline did seem a little bit presumptive, I guess, as the city manager mentioned in recommendation 1. The fairly aggressive timeline, but maybe that should be applauded.
And I think the amendments you suggested, those very minor amendments to 1, 2, and 3 are fine. And perhaps we could elaborate on number 4. Thank you.
Nothing. Okay. I did want to say that we received 2 pieces, 2 letters about this topic. And is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this topic?
Vice Mayor Cooper and council members, my name is Bob Middlestead. I'm with eBike Access. We're a nonprofit in Marin that represents e-bike riders. Jonathan Freeman is a co-founder with me. We are really big advocates for e-bikes, the legal ones, the ones you have to pedal. We are opponents of the throttle bikes that the kids are riding. I think we can just get to the heart of the issue if I can make 3 points. The first is AB 1778. This is a bill that Jonathan and I worked with Supervisor Sackett and Assemblymember Conley on. We're big supporters of it. It passed the Assembly. It is before the Senate now when they come back from their recess in August. It will go to the Senate floor for the third reading. They expect it to be enacted by the end of September. What I would propose is that the response to recommendation number 1 is that Belvedere is proud to be the first municipality in Marin to agree to adopt an ordinance as proposed by AB 1778 and the grand jury, and will do so as soon as it receives the authority when AB 1778 passes. And that ordinance really doesn't require further analysis, or it's not very complicated. It's what's set forth in AB 1778. It started off saying there'd be a statewide minimum age requirement of 16 for throttled e-bikes. Legislature wouldn't go for that. So Damon Conley agreed to the amendment, which is that Marin can have a pilot program where the county for unincorporated areas and then the cities and towns for their own areas can pass an ordinance requiring kids to be 16 and to wear helmets for Class 2, the throttled e-bikes. So if we want to support what Mary Sackett has done, want to support what Damon Conley is about to give us the authority to do, Belvedere should just say, you know, we're in. You got to be 16 in Belvedere to ride a Class 2 e-bike. A big problem are I call them Super 73s. That's the most popular brand of the throttle device that kids are riding. There's a whole bunch of them at Del Mar School. I counted the bikes for Safe Routes to School, and I know there's a lot there. They're against the law now. Almost every jurisdiction recognizes that. We just need to have enforcement. And I think that should be enforced. That point number 1 is it's a straightforward ordinance to say you'll adopt as soon as you have the authority. And then I guess number 2 is under the penal code, you need to state, if you're going to say further analysis, the scope and parameters of the analysis. And so that needs to be specified. I think that's pretty straightforward. Again, it's just we're going to wait for authority and then we're going to go for it. And then
Mr.
finally,
Middleset, sorry, if you're getting ready to wrap up, your 3 minutes are up. So- Okay. Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sorry to have to interrupt, but thank you so much. Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience? Yes. And I apologize for not saying, but it's a 3-minute limit.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Freeman, as Bob mentioned. First, I want to say hi to Bill Rothman, whom I've known for ages. I'm glad he's still doing his stuff around here. Anyway, my comments follow Bob's. And my concern, first of all, we're straight out activists. We, with e-bikes, as activists, we have liberty to be able to keep pushing on a point, and we will keep doing that. And because this is a very important point, one of the things I'm concerned about is what if 1778 is not enacted? So what I think as Bob was mentioning there, I think it's a good idea to act now. Be a trendsetter. I don't want to sacrifice injury or possible death just because further analysis is needed or anything like that. But all the government all the governmental entities need to act. And the other thing, aside from the education, publicity is needed. And I'm working with Paul Cohen, who was head of the Democratic Party. I'm talking about getting a publicity person involved to get more information and understanding out about this issue. Publicity, when you think about it, if you guys do pass an ordinance now, is a kind of enforcement. It lets people know that there's something going on, that there are other municipalities are going to be joining in this battle, which is winnable. It's definitely winnable. And I've got a minute left. I don't like using the scare tactics of one of the nonprofits that I'm involved with. We, End Spirit of Marin works only with people with quadriplegia. More than half of our recipients have been injured, and which means that their neck has been injured to the point where they can't use their hands, they can't transfer themselves. We have about 16 clients. We have a small budget. We have people up in Oroville, Vacaville, and over across the bay. We don't have any more money to take anybody on because folks who are injured like this often have to become poverty stricken and get on Medi-Cal to get ISSS. And we don't want to see anybody else join our roster because of this issue upon which we can do something now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can assure you that Belvedere is also very concerned about this, so thank you. I said I can assure you that Belvedere is also very concerned about this topic, so thank you. Are there any other people in the audience that would like to talk about this topic? Is there anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, then at this point, is there any more discussion from the council? Then can I have a motion to adopt 4E on the consent calendar?
One quick comment.
Oops.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I'm not 100% clear on exactly how we want to amend the response. I've heard a lot of good comments tonight from Councilmember Chemnitzer and others. If possible, I'd like to be able to work with her, incorporate that into the motion to work with Councilmember Chemnitzer to refine those responses before you send it out.
Great idea.
Does that require bringing it back next month for us to approve, or you just
No.
want to do it? No, okay.
It's due on the 26th of this month. I'm happy to do that. And I actually am proposing very minor changes in the language. And one reason I pulled it is that I thought it warranted this discussion, and I want to thank everybody for having it. A point of clarification, we're just talking about the class 2, and I think a lot of people, we're talking about education, and what a lot of people don't understand, that's only the e-bikes that don't require pedaling. Am I correct? So we're not talking about all e-bikes here. So it's just this one minor, type that's a problem. Okay.
Thank you.
Happy to help you. I will make the motion to adopt that with the amendments proposed as reflected in tonight's meetings minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent calendar passes. Thank you again. Okay, we'll now move on to our other scheduled items. And the first item on the list is a discussion and possible action on a revocable license for private improvements in the public way for 216 San Rafael Avenue. Is there a staff report on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cooper and council members. For your consideration this evening is an application for a revocable license at 216 San Rafael Avenue. On February 12th of this year, staff granted design review exemption approval to replace a front yard fence, pergola, sliding door, and glazed wall. The plans submitted to the building department indicated that the existing encroachments within the right-of-way would be improved, including replacing 2 existing planter boxes and resetting a 30-foot-long section of brick pavers. No revocable licenses have been recorded for this address, and as a condition of approval, staff requires a revocable license for all existing improvements within the San Rafael Avenue right-of-way. These improvements include the planter boxes, brick pavers, landscaping, driveway, and walkway. Staff suggests that the project benefits the public as the improvements enhance the aesthetic appeal of the property frontage and relieve parking congestion by allowing the homeowners access to their carport. Staff recommends the findings can be made for the revocable license and recommends approval. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for staff on this? I see that the applicant is here, and is there anything you'd like to add? Either of you? No, you're fine. Go ahead. You know what, Connie? Beth is going to give you a microphone so we can all hear you.
Thank you. It is a 60-year-old fence, and I think it's time for it to be replaced.
Okay, that's great. Does anyone have any questions for our applicant or for the staff? No. I have one question. Are the plantings going to be those two vines, or are you replacing those two
mean the
vines?
the
When you
roses?
replace the fence, are you also replacing the two plants that are there, or are you changing that?
I probably we will change them and make it simpler.
Okay, but it'll still be just sort of something going up on, I'm just asking because the brick will still be there, so you're not necessarily planting the whole area.
No, I'm not going to plant
Okay,
anything
okay,
probably.
okay. Thank you, that's all I had. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this revocable license? No? Anyone on Zoom?
Vice Mayor Cooper, I see none.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring this back to the council for any discussion if there is any. No?
No, I
Okay,
think it's entirely appropriate to replace an existing fence.
and fixing the brick is great also. If there are no other further questions or comments, I will call for a motion to approve the request for revocable license at 216 Santa Fe Avenue.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the license is approved. Sorry you waited so long, but it was a quick decision. Yes, you are. Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight, both of you. Our second item is the discussion and possible action on a revocable license for private improvements in the public way along 43 Peninsula Road.
Thank you again, Vice Mayor Cooper and council members. For your consideration again this evening is an application for revocable license at 43 Peninsula Road. On December 12th of last year, the Planning Commission granted design review approval for a residential addition and remodel. The additions, which are shaded here in blue, are at the rear and central portions of the property. The project did not propose new improvements within the public right-of-way. No revocable licenses have been recorded for this address, and as a condition of approval, the Planning Commission required that the applicant obtain a revocable license for all existing improvements within the right-of-way. Shaded in gray are the existing right-of-way improvements, which include a stone walkway, concrete driveway, various shrubs and grasses to 5 feet tall, and a magnolia tree. Here, current pictures show the existing landscaping along the Peninsula Road right-of-way. A few plantings across the left and right side of the frontage encroach onto the sidewalk along Peninsula Road. Staff suggests that the existing improvements enhance the aesthetic appeal of the property frontage and relieve traffic congestion. Staff suggests a condition be included in the revocable license to remove the plantings that encroach into the city sidewalk, either through trimming or removal. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Does anyone have questions for the staff?
Can you just pull up the picture again of the plantings?
So since that's up there and you didn't have a question?
No,
Okay.
moved quickly.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear, all these plantings are being replaced that are currently there?
The intent is to not do anything with the plantings
Okay,
right now.
so these plants would remain with the condition that you brought up, that they be trimmed back to not impede the pedestrian use of the sidewalk.
That's correct, as a recommendation.
Okay.
Does that condition become permanent, meaning there's an obligation on the homeowner to consistently cut those plantings back so they don't impede on the sidewalk?
That's a great question. I would,
Yes, if I understand staff's recommendation, this would be another term of the revocable license agreement.
And
that's,
in the revocable license, is there a condition on maintenance? I think maybe that would get to it. Is there something in a revocable license that has to do with maintenance that you're aware of?
I'd have to look at the license again. I can look at it right now, actually.
Right, but if I understand staff, if you don't mind me adding just a little bit, if I understand staff's recommendation, I think we want to be even more specific, given the current, I guess, at least picture of the plantings, that those are maintained to make sure that pedestrians are allowed, can freely pass on the sidewalk.
Exactly.
I suggest it might be an amendment to item number 4, which currently reads, to the extent this license authorizes the erection or installation of any infrastructure improvements that are subject to the American with Disabilities Act. Licensee agrees to construct and maintain those improvements in full compliance with the requirements of the act. And then to clarify that this means including no impediment to access or use of the adjacent sidewalk, because that would just make it a little broader than the ADA. But I think the city intent is to protect the public access to the sidewalk. It might be somewhere else, but that's an easy place.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
No, but I would be prepared to make the motion to approve it with that amendment to item number 4, if that's acceptable to council.
Is it okay if I ask a question? Sure. First, okay, thanks. So I guess my question, you read my mind, because the issue with the plants and the sidewalk was something that I did want to condition. But what I think also gets at what Councilmember Chemnitzer is saying is that actually in that list of, I think they're called factors, A, B through G, A actually says that landscaping or related improvements should not significantly impede public views or views from neighboring properties or infringe on privacy of neighboring properties. And I was thinking, I don't know if it's possible to change this. Maybe this is not something you can amend, but it would be nice for this, but also going forward for all revocable licenses to have something such as nor impede or infringe on sidewalks. Because we're talking about views and neighbors, and to me, it felt like that it would go there. And then in letter F, the statement is where necessary to protect or enhance public safety. And I thought it was odd, because I don't know if you meant it this way, but staff wrote the existing improvements do not protect or enhance public safety, which I agree. They didn't. They made the area less safe. But so I don't think you actually meant it that way. I think you probably meant it didn't relate to those things, but maybe the way you write that in the future, would need to be more specific to it because I agree with you, it does not. And therefore I did want a condition put in there, which you already did. So that's all I had to say. And now we can go back to Councilmember Chemnitzer's motion.
I move to approve the revocable license for the private improvements in the public right-of-way along Peninsula Road for the property at 43 Peninsula Road with the proviso that condition 4 be amended as previously articulated.
How about also A? You want to throw A in there? That was the
A
one I
is
had.
the staff report,
Oh,
not
sorry.
the actual
Okay.
license.
Oh,
So I
right.
think,
Okay.
but I'm, oh,
She will when we get to public. Oh, right, because we have to do that before the motion. Sorry, is there anyone in the public? She over there with your hand raised? Please come up. Have an opinion. We would love to hear it. Okay. Okay, never mind. Sorry. Is there anyone on Zoom?
I see none.
Okay. Okay. Back we go again. Sorry, I didn't mean to
I did that.
interrupt you. Okay.
We just
Would-
need a
would you
second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we have another interesting discussion and possible action to appoint members to the Parks, Open Space and Lanes Committee. As I said earlier, we have 4 very well qualified applicants who have stepped up to support the well-being of our city. And it's up to us to choose 2 of them to create a balanced committee, hopefully representing various components of the entire community. I did want to note that although Louise Rathjen was not able to interview, we can, I think we can use her letter of interest in order to consider her in part of the discussion if people would like to. So does anyone want to begin this discussion? No, I'm not. I'm looking anywhere. I'm just doing the swivel head.
I guess I'll start. All of the 3 candidates that we interviewed are extraordinarily well qualified, and it's as well as Louise, and it's frustrating that we have so many great applicants and we have to say no to 2 of them. So that's a very difficult decision. They all, as the 3 that we interviewed, all brought attributes that are appealing in terms of their fundraising abilities, which are an important component, strength to add to this committee, knowing how important fundraising has been in the past, and it's been really one member that's done a lot of the fundraising in the past. So it would be good to add that attribute to the committee. But I think that all of the 3 that we interviewed, they all absolutely qualified. I am aware that we have all males on the committee in terms of the 3 members that are there. So I definitely think that we should be adding at least 1 female member to the committee to give some balance to that. And I think from what I understand, we have good distribution between the island and the lagoon, which I think is important, sort of regardless of who we add here. I think we get that balance in terms of representation. If I have to go for 2, and I'm not sure why I'm starting here, I would, and again, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to interview Louise because that doesn't give us a sort of full picture of who she is. I think Marika's credentials are first rate, and she's contributed to the community and obviously has an incredible resume, and I'd be supportive of that. And also female. And then I think in terms of both John and Brian, again, both equally talented. I was probably, and again, I'd like to hear from other council members. I like John's ideas in terms of some of the things he talked about in terms of engaging the community. that I was drawn to, and that he has young children and is a young father in Belvedere. Those are attributes to me as well. But again, I think they're all high quality candidates. So that's just my slightly sort of my slight preference, but I'm definitely keen to hear from other council members.
Well, I was very pleased to see that we had a number of really qualified candidates step into this position. As you know, I think Parks and Open Space is a really important committee of the city, and there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of need there right now for some dynamic members to join the really great people that we now have. This was a difficult choice, so let me go through them one by one. I really hope that it's very unfortunate that Louise was not here tonight. I hope that she will step up to this or some other committee in the future, because I think she would be a real asset to the community. Unfortunately, the letter did not quite give me enough information to be able to compare apples to apples with the candidates whom we were able to actually meet tonight. So that said, I was really looking more seriously at the other three. And were there three positions, I think all three of these great candidates would be an asset to the community. And I really hope that that if we don't select someone tonight, they will apply to this or another committee. I think Marika really stood out for me. Unbelievable background that will could benefit Parks and Open Space and Lanes in so many ways. And she and demonstrated volunteerism in the city for many, many years. So, and I was also interested that her term at the BLPOA is ending, so that'll give her a little bit of time to devote to this new project. So she really stood out for me. I don't really look so much at gender, but I do look at the geographical distribution of the various members on the committee. I think it's really important to have some members from the island and some members from the lagoon. Between the other candidates, either one of them would be a real asset to the community, I think. But I did share the comment of the public comment of Mr. Denniston that 5 months is really a short time to be on this particular committee, even though it's clear to me that, and I really think it's wonderful that someone who has grown up in Marin has returned to start living in Belvedere. But I think it's important to look at the length of time applicants have lived here and what they've done with that time. And Mr. Sherm's letter really demonstrated to me that he, in the 3 years he's lived in Belvedere, is in fact really using the public open space, where he says, once we joined the community, the lanes were where both my wife and I took countless walks with new friends, forging what we expect will be lifelong friendships. And that really struck me as someone who understands the importance of the social infrastructure that Parks and Open Space and our lanes can offer. So as between two qualified candidates, Mr. Sherm is the one I would select. Are we allowed at this point to say which of the two terms we
I think we'll
are
come
considering,
to
or
that. Well, actually, that's a question from Mr. Shen. If we, before we do, we have to do two motions on this because there was an unexpected vacancy that arose when Jenna Watson went to planning. So we are putting one person in one 4-year seat and one in a 3-year seat. But before we get to all that, do we do public comment again, since we already took public comment about this topic?
That's a good question. I was actually just chatting with the city manager about that. It is best to take public comment one more time since it was
So we would do
agendized as-
it before any motions.
Right.
Okay.
And to answer your first question, yes, I think the city council should be explicit when it makes its final decision about who is going into which
Right.
seat, because they do have two different terms.
Correct. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, so
can that be done in one motion?
It could. I think we just want to be specific again about which person is going to which seat, given the two different terms.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would agree with what we've heard tonight, and I think another deciding factor is that in the APM for Parks and Open Spaces, preference is supposed to be given to families with young children and to master gardeners. We didn't ask if anyone was a master gardener, but I think they would have told us had they been. So I think I agree that I would like to see balance with some more women on the committee. And I think I will look at the APMs and that a family with young children, to my understanding, it would be John Sherm, who, as noted, has spent a lot of time in our parks and has a family growing up here. So, okay, so at that point, is there any additional public comment on this topic? Anyone on Zoom?
I see none.
Okay, thank you. So we do have the two different motions tonight due to the vacancy, unexpected vacancy. So are you suggesting that we could do them at one time?
Yes, I would propose to move, I would move
Okay,
that we appoint Marika Bergson to fill the open seat on Parks, Open Spaces and Lanes Committee with the term ending May 31st, 2028. And I further move that we appoint John Sherm to fill the unexpected vacancy seat on the Parks, Open Spaces and Lanes Committee with the term ending May 31st, 2027.
I will second that motion.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, congratulations to Marika Bergson and John Sherm. And as we all noted, we hope and assume that the other two applicants will be involved in all these activities going forward. It's now time for the open forum, and the open forum is an opportunity for any citizen to briefly address the city council on any matter that does not appear on the agenda.
I thought I was the only ultra endurance athlete in the room. Clearly, I was wrong.
I'm not finished though, so you
Oh,
have to
sorry.
wait a second. Sorry, that's okay. This is my one chance, so I have to finish reading this. Matters that appear to warrant a more lengthy presentation or council consideration may be placed on the agenda for further discussion at a later meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to make public comment?
Yes, ma'am. I see the clerk is to be complimented for her wicked sense of humor this afternoon when she said, "Oh, this is going to be a short one."
Yes, I agree. And just to remind you, we have 3 minutes for open forum, public open forum.
I wasn't aware of that constraint. What am I supposed to do?
You
Wait.
can look at the clock and it'll tick down, so you have 3 minutes.
All right, we'll get halfway.
Okay,
I need to speak to outside counsel before he goes. I thought that was highly inappropriate. He made an assumption about me that is incorrect. He interrupted me. He accused me of interrogation. What assumption did you make when you accused me of interrogation?
Would you like to speak on something that hasn't happened yet this evening?
I found it highly inappropriate. I'll
Okay.
leave it at that.
Okay.
Yes, I am here to address something. Chief Wu, if I had a tough day, I had a tough day. It started at 1 a.m. We'll see how far we get. My wife's at the city council. My name is Derek Deniston. Proud 25-year resident along with my wife, Chris Deniston. We love living here. It's a beautiful place. It's also a very safe place and a tremendous sense of community. Why are you listening to a recording instead of me? You turn to Chief Wu. Chief Wu, did I have a rough day? Did I have a really rough day? Would you say I had a really rough week? Thank you, Chief Wu. I'm coming to you here on a recording regarding a decision from Rebecca Markwitt, Director of Planning and Building, issued on Wednesday, June 26th, in response to our application to install an EV charger for our purchase model 2019 Tesla May 21st. A lot of back and forth between Rebecca and Brian, and here's the end result. An email dated Wednesday, June 26, 24 at 11:15 a.m. Hi, Derek. Discussed your EV charger, and I did some research into your property and the parking situation. You have a revocable license and variance to park where you are parking. I'm attaching documents for your reference. Talk to Brian to get an understanding of what he had discussed with you. The long and short of it is, the location that you proposed is not safe for you or the public. You cannot approve that location. Brian and I discussed that locating the charger behind the gate, which is referring to the deer fence gate on our front walkway, would be ideal. You would be required to retract but not using and keep it on private property. Please contact Brian in details. I will be out of town starting tomorrow. We're sent also copy of the email should you have any questions. Thanks, Rebecca. One second.
Mr. Dennison, your wife should also have 3 minutes.
Excellent. She'll be up here.
Okay.
Thank you. Great idea.
The practical realities. The location that Rebecca's decision requires us to put the charger is approximately 35 feet to 45 feet. This is possible positioning for rather large 2018 Tesla Model S. Some of you may know, very large vehicle, charging port is located in the right rear.
It's actually the left rear.
So
Left
it's
rear.
even more distant than the nearest one, which would be the left rear. It's wrong.
That's the right rear.
So we see at least 3 challenges with implementing this decision. One, it is technically impossible to comply with because the longest charging cables Tesla makes are 24 feet. As I said, Rebecca's decision requires 35 to 40 at a minimum. Number 2, she, in an informal conversation at an event,
The barbecue day.
the emergency services made a comment that she thought an EV charger was a private benefit in a public right of way. What's interesting to me is I think of
sewage, and stormwater runoff. So all told, there are 7 utilities that almost every house in Belvedere has, either coming up to the house from the public right of way or 2 going down. I don't understand why EV chargers should be considered differently. So I asked that question to Rebecca. She verbally said, you don't have to have charging to make the property habitable. Challenge number 3. As some of you may know, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 9 years ago, 2015. And that is a disease that's officially covered by the Disabilities Act. So I'm concerned that this decision by the city could expose it to legal risk for failure to apply the ADA, because it's imposing an unreasonable imposition on someone with a disability. Another point is that I have to be a person who I believe has procured personally negotiated transactions to procure more supplies of power. I believe my husband and anyone else on earth. I've been doing it for 21 years. It's my passion, my goal. I couldn't right away. It took 6 years of depreciation before we could afford the one we bought on May 21st. We followed the rules. The city has prevented us charging the vehicle at our house. So as fun as it is, walk down here to City Hall, sometimes find a charging vehicle, sometimes not. I'd like to respectfully, gratefully for your consideration of a reversal of this decision, so we don't have to sell the vehicle I spent 2 years looking for that had enough depreciation. Opt off, I could afford it, so that we can help the city follow its environmental plan to reduce greenhouse gases, primarily through the switch from vehicles with internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. It's a delightful car to drive. Don't want to have to sell it. Thank you so much for your attention. We look forward to any questions or comments you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for.
Yeah, that was the first thing.
Just to let you know that the normal process is that we don't actually ask you questions.
I'm aware.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. I just, because you said, sure.
Yeah, I think you can consider it at the next meeting, correct?
I'm actually not sure it would come to us yet unless you appeal it. Is
I'm
this?
appealing.
Oh, you're appealing. Okay. Can I actually ask staff to let us know?
Of course.
Because I don't know all the ins and outs.
Of course.
Okay.
You're the council member. You don't answer to me, I answer to you.
Sam, are you involved in some of this? My understanding is that there was a request for an application for an electric vehicle charging station. We have a preliminary determination that was made by the building department and the planning department based on the location and perhaps some of the geographic constraints of that site or safety issues that were brought up. I'm not sure if Rebecca's actually away right now, so I
Right.
can't confer with her on this, but I think it's something that we could follow up on.
Okay.
I doubt it would come back to council. It's a staff level decision. However, we will work with the property owner and see if there is an alternative out there that we can explore. Happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be a great solution, and hopefully we can find something that works. But as a point of clarification, considering that you said it's a staff only decision, is it possible for a resident to appeal a staff decision or only a planning commission decision?
That's a good question, Andrew.
I think staff can follow up with you, Vice Mayor Cooper. I think at this point, we've probably exceeded the scope of sort of general public
Right.
comment and open forum.
Okay,
But I believe staff will certainly follow up with you as needed.
okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. You actually, oh, it went over. Sorry, Chris, it went way over. Okay, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to make a public comment?
I see none.
Seeing none, then I will close the open forum, and seeing no other business this evening, I will adjourn the July 8th, 2024 City Council.
Are you using the gavel?